Part 15. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 141. Landing on a deserted beach avoids the trouble of being recognized because of his ship's uniform and his identity. At this time, Bismarck stood on the beach and put back his ship uniform. The journey back was uneventful, so except for his trouser legs, which were slightly wet from the sea water, the rest of his clothes were dry. Prince Eugen stood nearby, and the girl squatted on the beach and picked up a beautiful shell. She was carrying a backpack, which contained a change of clothes and the bounty she earned as a mercenary. Not many people know about this landing place. There is no beautiful scenery around it, and the sea is full of reefs. Ships will not come here, and tourists will not come here. That is, the ship girl uses it to land. After crossing the rocks on the beach, pushing aside the weeds and thorns, a big tree appeared in sight. After walking along the big tree for a few minutes, you can see the path. After walking along the path for a while, you will reach the suburbs of Chuangziu. People were gradually filling up the suburbs. Some people noticed the two women. Compared with Prince Eugen's adorable girlish appearance, Bismarck's serious expression and military temperament made people feel more stressed. So until now, although people have been paying attention to this place, no one dared to talk to him. Both sides of the suburban streets are lined with stalls, and fruits, vegetables, and spices are placed on the roadside in sacks or wooden frames. The two walked under the mottled tree shadows and passed a small pavilion. Prince Eugen suddenly laughed. Bismarck asked, "What are you laughing at?" "I saw the books placed in the small pavilion, and I was thinking that Bizai was probably drawing my sister's notebook again." Bismarck also felt a headache for his sister who liked to draw his own notebooks. He beat her and scolded her, but he never got angry. Maybe it was because he realized that he really had no way to do anything to her. Think about it, every time she comes back, she will have to leave a lot of hard-earned commissions. In fact, in terms of fighting wool, Bizai is even a stronger ship girl than herself. Bismarck said, "If I draw my book again, I will have to beat her. Every time you hit her, you just show off. She is unscrupulous. Otherwise, what else can we do? Why don't I give you the authority to beat her up?" Prince Eugen stuck out the tip of his tongue and said playfully, "I don't dare to beat her, and it was Leipzig who drew my book, so I will beat Leipzig." The good girl Leipzig was led bad by Bizai. I don't know if she has spent all her money. She told me before that her works were published. But how much money can she make from publishing? She also likes to buy messy things. You can't make any money. Prince Eugen didn't like the book either. Originally, if Bizai also worked as a mercenary, the commission he would earn would be at least 100 times that of painting the book. She just sleeps or reads notebooks all day, notebook after notebook. I have been affected by her. Bismarck rubbed his forehead, unable to do anything about his sister's hobbies. Besides, I eat instant noodles all day long, otherwise I eat takeout. Those fast food are very unclean. Although he always keeps a straight face in front of his sister, when it comes to who cares most about Bizai, Bismarck is really the one. After all, he is the sister. Talking casually, they walked a long way and reached the streets of Chuangziu City. They stood on the roadside waiting for the city tram to come over. Not long after I got in the car, I saw familiar roads through most of the city. There are apples. Buy some. Bizai also needs some nutrition. Prince Eugen said, "I need some ingredients: green peppers, eggs, meat, garlic, chili. Do you want eggs or duck eggs? Let me cook for you tonight." "It's okay, I haven't tasted your craftsmanship for a long time." Prince Eugen waved his hand and said, "Hee, I am practicing my skills for my sister." Soon after buying groceries, Prince Eugen carried the groceries in his backpack, like a college student living with others. The journey home was very familiar. It had been a long time since I had been back and not much had changed. It's just that a beef noodle shop at the corner of the street turned into a hot pot restaurant. At this time, it was full of people, occupying half of the street, and wastewater was poured on the ground. Soon after, when she returned home, Bismarck opened the door, and then she saw that the living room had been tidied up. He reached out and touched the cabinet. There were still light water stains on it. It seemed that he had noticed that he was back, and so he suddenly cleaned it. He had done similar things before. Prince Eugen placed his backpack in the living room, and then walked to the kitchen carrying the dishes. Bismarck looked at the wall and suddenly heard a sound coming from the room between himself and Bizai. Then she opened the door, and there were people surrounding the room. They seemed to be in high spirits, and they didn't even notice that she had walked in with Prince Eugen. Why are there so many people sitting inside? Originally it was not just Leipzig and Tirpitz, but also their friends. Has my sister who stays at home all day actually learned to make friends? That's something to celebrate. How to describe it? Universal celebration? This term is a slight exaggeration. To celebrate? That's a derogatory term. She didn't know Chinese well, so she couldn't think of a suitable word at this time. Do they seem to be talking about some secret things? She suddenly wanted to listen, so she decided to walk over without saying hello. At this time, Bizai was lying on the ground. Even if the wooden floor was not dirty, it was already very cold in this day, so lying on the ground would not work. Leipzig was holding some photos and laughing next to her. Hadn't she seen those photos before? Is it that funny? There are no particularly strange photos. Among several people, a little girl with short pink hair similar to Bizai threw herself on another person. That little figure was quite familiar. As for the last person, he has his back to the door. It's hard to tell who he is from his back view. But judging from the short hair, it seems to be a man. When did they communicate with men? If you think about it with malicious intent, are you trying to salvage the boat? If you want to salvage the ship, it would be a bit too high. Neither Leipzig nor his sister are ship girls who can be salvaged. But you can't look at the scene with a harsh eye. It's probably a friend you don't know how you met. Whether you're a male or a female, you shouldn't behave or be harsh when you're a friend. Admiral, I want to see. I want to see. The little girl's voice sounded familiar. It was indeed the Admiral, so he was that little girl's Admiral. At this time, the man raised his hands high as if he wanted to tease the little girl. He lowered his head slightly and looked at the photo, which was his own photo. She seemed to be making strange movements in the photo, although it was a little impolite. After thinking about it, she pulled the photo out of the man's hand. Me wearing an open-chested sweater? The image of myself in the photo is embarrassing. Although there are outsiders who are angry at my sister at this time, the photo will definitely not be returned. Thinking this, she heard a voice. Who? Then she saw the man's face, which was etched in the deepest part of her memory and could never be forgotten. She pursed her lips, and then their eyes met. Sister Meow. Bismarck sat on the edge of the bed, hugging Kosei who flew towards him. Xiao Zai hugged her waist and kept rubbing his head against her chest, while she kept stroking the little girl's pink hair. At this time, Bismarck looked at Sugu sitting on the ground and asked, "When did you come back?" The voice was flat and showed no excitement, as if her husband had left for work in the morning and then rushed home before her, so he casually asked why it was so early. It was as if Sugu had met him many times before, as if Sugu had never left. At this moment, Bismarck's face remained unchanged. Probably for a while. Why did you leave the town hall? There are some reasons. Who brought you back? Little house. Where? It's the former town hall. Really? I haven't gone back for a long time. Will you go back? Suddenly feeling the atmosphere around him, Xiaozai sat in Bismarck's arms and did not like to interrupt as usual. Will you still leave? No way. How did you find this place? Because of an accident, I saw the notebook. Sugu briefly explained the matter. I thought Baizai might be able to draw notebooks, and then I met Leipzig who was selling notebooks. Then I have to thank my sister for this. Bismarck asked again, what has the admiral been doing? I met Xiao Zhe in the former town hall and wanted to rebuild the townhouse, but the townhouse was already so deserted. We didn't know where you were, but Xiao Zhe happened to know where Lexington was, so I went to find Lieutenant General first. Lexington. We met San Juan first. Little by little, Sugu said, now he has passed the exam to become the admiral and is waiting to rebuild the garrison. Lexington again, she is always the greatest help to the admiral. Bismarck remembered what happened in the past. It was already quite late when he arrived at the garrison. At that time, there were already many large ships such as Lion, Sister Bazai, Lexington, and Colorado in the garrison. Battleships cost a lot, so most of the time it was Lexington who led the garrison forward. Bismarck hugged Xiaozai and said, I have traveled to many places, seen many scenery, seen many garrison buildings, and met many admirals. I didn't expect you to go back, so I didn't see you. The surrounding atmosphere became very strange, and he didn't want the atmosphere to continue like this. Sugu said, I heard rumors about you during my internship, the Black Ghost on the Sea, the most powerful ship girl mercenary. Admiral, do you think this is not good? Help other garrison buildings. No, I just complimented you for being awesome. While they were talking, Prince Eugen, who was packing things in the kitchen, walked in. Sister Bismarck, then she screamed, Admiral. As soon as her voice fell, she was immediately pulled back by Leipzig. Then she discovered the situation in the room, covered her mouth with her hands, and quickly let go when several people inside looked at her. Seeing Prince Eugen, Xiaozai, who was already feeling uneasy, squirmed in Bismarck's arms, then broke away and said, Sister Eugen, do you have anything good to eat? When Bismarck released her, she immediately just ran out. In the living room outside the room, Baizai, who had escaped secretly, asked softly, what was said in it? Xiaozai was as silent as Baizai. There was no one in the room at this time, it was empty. Bismarck was sitting on the bed, and Sugu was no longer sitting on the ground, but sitting on a high stool in front of the drawing board in the north house. The light shone in from the window in bunches. At this time, the room fell silent. Sugu didn't know how to liven up the atmosphere at this time. Then he wanted to open his mouth to find a topic. When he opened his mouth, Bismarck had already spoken first. She asked, has the admiral thought about us? The ship girl can easily see through people's hearts, and Sugu knows that in the past, Lexington and the others generally did not pay special attention to Sugu's words and mood, and it didn't matter how they answered casually. But when Bismarck asked such a question, she really wanted a question and answer. After a while, seeing that Sugu didn't speak, Bismarck took a photo of himself wearing heart-shaped open bra and asked again, does the admiral like Bismarck like this? Huh, Sugu was a little surprised, not knowing why Bismarck asked such a question. If he truly lets himself go, if Bismarck is an outsider and a stranger, he is just joking with others casually. He would definitely say, I like it, Bismarck likes everything, it's just that although I can think of how to give a sweet answer, I don't dare to say it in the end. At this time, Bismarck held the photo between two fingers and rotated it in the air. She looked at her admiral with his head lowered. She asked again, does the admiral like Bismarck in the photo? She lowered her head and looked at herself in the photo. She was completely different from her usual military self. The open-chested sweater reveals her plump and round chest. The only one who dares to wear such clothes is her inconspicuous sister. When I came back, I saw my admiral looking at the photo very excitedly. Do you like yourself that way? Bismarck took a breath, raised his eyebrows, and immediately felt that something was wrong. It would only make him look more cold and vicious. The corners of her mouth curved again to try to smile, but the deliberate smile was not natural, and she could feel the stiff muscles pulling. Then she realized that she couldn't make gentle movements all at once. She raised her hand and clenched it into a fist and shook it stiffly. Her face was also serious and her eyes were serious. She had neither the cunningness of Saratoga nor the gentleness of Lexington. Anyway, Bismarck kept this strange serious expression and said softly, "Meow." Sugu opened his mouth slightly, in disbelief. Such Bismarck was really strange. He thought of a word. Soft pussy. Then he thought that if there was anything that could make Bismarck make such an action, and do it under ordinary circumstances rather than in a drunken state, it would be himself. Although I have always felt indifferent to the ship girls I met for the first time, I just felt like they were just strangers and acquaintances. However, looking at Bismarck's stiff movements at this time, he suddenly felt a little sad and guilty. Sugu lowered his head and said, "I'm sorry, Bismarck." Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 142. The hot water from the shower fell, and the short silver-gray hair was soaked. He inserted his fingers into the hair, and then scrubbed it with shampoo. Water drops slid down his cheeks. Bismarck rubbed his face with his hands, and then remembered what he had said to his admiral. "I didn't think there was any problem at first, but now I felt embarrassed. It's really a bit uncomfortable to be able to say words like meow, and she has really become the sister meow in Xiaoxi's mouth." The palms of her hands slid down her slender neck. Because she was a ship girl, even though she was always exposed to the wind, rain, and sun outside, her skin was still as smooth as jade, and her slender fingers didn't have any calluses. At this time, the fingers slide on the skin, the steam of the hot water rises, the chest rises and falls with the breathing, the fingers slide on the neck, collarbone, and finally fall on the chest. No matter who looks at it from any angle, her figure can be considered tall and graceful, and she is an attractive woman no matter what. However, most people have forgotten her female side under the neat military uniform, cold face, and oppressive aura. The 5 fingers were clasped in a bowl shape on the chest, and the other hand was placed on the lower abdomen, groping a little bit, thinking a little uneasily that she seemed to have 8-pack abs from a female point of view. This may not be something to be happy about. Things. The last time I took a serious shower was many days ago. I took Prince Eugen through half the world. In fact, the clothes on my body were already very dirty. She is not a eldest lady. The real Miss Hood has gone somewhere. She is called a man, but she cares a little. The water from the shower head gurgled and fell. Bismarck in the bathroom was thinking about this and other problems, and then fumbled for the soap in the box and picked it up. "How long has it been since you took a bath like this?" Feeling a little dazed, the soap slipped from his hand. She was about to bend down to pick it up, then thought about it, then squatted down with her legs bent, and then the soap was picked up and rubbed on her body. Just like that, she suddenly realized that she had become really strange today. Bismarck stayed in the bathroom for a long time, cleaning himself up and down, drying his hair and body with a towel, and then looked at the basket with a change of clothes. The clothes in the basket were prepared by Prince Eugen for himself. His sister was a loser, and the only one she could rely on was Prince Eugen. Not long after, Bismarck walked out of the bathroom, rarely standing in front of the mirror and looking at himself. Change out of the military uniform. This is at home, so there is no need for the neat military uniform that is convenient for fighting. At this time, Bismarck was wearing a turtleneck sweater, and his black military boots were replaced by fur slippers. The originally neat and clean military temperament softened and turned into an ordinary housewife with slightly sharp eyes. Then she stood in front of the mirror and swayed uneasily, tugging at the collar of her clothes, feeling a little uncomfortable. After all, he originally didn't want to wear such clothes, but Prince Eugen repeatedly said that the original clothes seemed too serious, and it was not a battle or working time, and a military uniform would only put pressure on people. So there is no other way. She picked up her messy short hair with her fingers, thinking, this is the only way. Then she took a comb and combed her short hair, but even when she came out of the bathroom, the water stains on her hair hadn't dried yet, and her cat ear-like hair was already standing up. In the past, the prefect always said that Lafayette was his and Nelson's child, because Lafayette also had a similar problem of being unable to take care of his hair. I didn't think anything of it before, but now I think it's a good thing to be teased by the Admiral. At least it means that the other person is by my side. Then she took care of herself, stood in front of the mirror, and patted her face. I warned myself in my heart, I can't think like this anymore, Bismarck, you have become very strange. On the other side, dinner has been eaten and everyone is sitting casually. Prince Eugen prepared the dinner, and she was the one who cleaned it up at the end. Sitting on the other side, Sugu looked at the girl who was cleaning up the blue tabletop. Prince Eugen, who was wearing an apron with a silly smile on his face, looked like a nanny. The opponent originally existed in the game as a 5-star dog food, which is a very common ship girl despite being very rare in the game setting. However, because the modified skills can protect companions on both sides, it occupies a very important position among heavy cruisers. It's just that when he entered the trap, he had already missed the era of Prince Eugen's most powerful Eugen occult, so he was a member of the Quincy Kun party. At this time, Sugu was drinking water, Xiao Zai was lying on his lap and shaking his hands in boredom, while Prince Eugen was clearing the table. As for Bizai, he was looking lucky at this time, because the photo that existed as a treasure had been confiscated by his sister. But my sister never cursed or hit anyone, so it made people feel lucky and uneasy. Admiral, what should I do with that photo? Admiral, what did sister tell you? Bizai's performance is still good so far, and he doesn't start to get sleepy from time to time. Probably the main reason is that he just made a mistake, so his performance is a little restrained. Nothing was said. Tell me, what did you say? Please tell me. Oh, I really didn't say anything. Bismarck went to the bathroom to take a shower, so Leipzig was free. She smiled and said from the side, Bizai, even if the Admiral said something, I won't tell you. Real? Sugu nodded, really? No. Bizai turned his head to look at Sugu, his voice was soft and soft. Of course, Bismarck's performance could not be explained by himself, and he was not a close friend. Sugu changed the subject and said, actually, I'm very surprised. You weren't next to me, and then I couldn't see you when I turned around. Bizai said with a proud look on his face, I escaped and no one found out. Leipzig covered his face, and Zai turned around on Sugu's lap and said, who said it wasn't discovered? You ran away like a caterpillar. Sister Miao has seen you a long time ago. Bizai heard what Xiao Zai said. She was Xiao Zai's natural enemy in the ecological chain. She reached out and tried to get into Xiao Zai's clothes, but was kicked by Xiao Zai. Withdrawing his hand and blowing a breath, Bizai said, did your sister really see you? Yes, you must have been seen by Bismarck, seeing the way you ran away. You are dead now, Leipzig said, except Xiao Zai, anyone in Bizai can bully, so friendship starts from the time of bullying. Leipzig added, you will probably be hung up and beaten by Bismarck. After saying something casually, Prince Eugen had already cleared the tables and chairs. She wiped her hands with a towel and asked, Admiral, are you sleeping with Bismarck and Bizai? Or should you let me and Leipzig squeeze in, and you can sleep alone, sleeping in my room? I don't know. But if I go back, I can probably catch the last tram now. Bismarck made people feel ashamed and embarrassed to leave like this, but the other party didn't let him stay, so just stay here, okay? Sometimes when I think about it, I feel so hypocritical. In addition, Lexington also needs an explanation, so I don't know what to do at this time. Then will the Admiral go back tonight? Not sure. Sugu was still hesitating, not knowing what to do, when a voice came over. Where are you going back? Bismarck stood at the doorway from the bathroom to the living room wearing a turtleneck tight sweater. At this time, the sweater outlined the lines of her figure, making them uneven. Then she continued, go back to Lexington. Sugu thought for a while, but did not express his attitude. He just explained, because I didn't tell her when I went out in the morning. She probably thought I would go back. Bismarck had already told Bismarck some things about himself. Experience. Are you from Lexington? Sugu said, definitely not. Then is she your mother? No. Then why do you have to ask her permission to make a decision? Of course, it's because I am reasonable. No matter what happens, as long as I start, I will always give an explanation at the end. But he was not ready to say that at this time. After all, he knew that talking about another woman in front of a woman would be a fool. So he pushed Xiaozai in his arms, hoping that the other party would say something and at least share the firepower, whether he wanted to go or stay, or give him some advice. However, Xiaozai, who was still full of energy at this time, was like a dead fish, despite being pushed around without saying a word. I have to say that Xiaozai is actually super smart. You stay here and stay in the small house. We'll talk about anything tomorrow. Let Leipzig explain it to Lexington. After saying this, with Leipzig's innocent expression, Bismarck walked to the table and picked up the kettle, poured himself a glass of water. Sugu looked at Bismarck, who was speaking at this time. The other person's face was serious, as if he was giving an order. Bismarck, who originally raised his hand and made a meow sound, completely disappeared. He hugged Xiaozai and suddenly realized that except for acting like an adult in front of the little girl, it was difficult for him to maintain his majesty as an admiral. He was indeed born to be a soldier. At this time, he hugged the small house tightly as if venting his anger, thinking that he must build the garrison as soon as possible, otherwise it would be really difficult to deal with it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai Rong Yan. Chapter 143. During the time you were away, I traveled all over the country as a mercenary, from east to west, across the ocean, across the strait and across the canal. I saw cherry blossoms, osmanthus trees, and the pine trees covered with snow. In the end, Sugu did not go back, but asked Leipzig to make a trip as a messenger. At this time, Sugu said, when I first met Xiaozai, she didn't recognize me at all and pointed a gun at me. I was thinking that that little girl was really cute. Sugu recalled what he had become in the beginning. When he met the small house in the ruined townhouse, even though the other person was holding a gun, he was strangely not afraid and even took the initiative to say hello. Xiaozai retorted, you were wearing sunglasses and a hat at that time. I could easily recognize you. You were just like a bad guy. We met San Juan on the passenger ship. I was still drawing drawings in the morning, and suddenly I was called over by Bazai to help. It's not that great, it's just a matter of modifying the existing drawings. I don't know much about the governor's mansion. I went to the governor's mansion when I was an intern. No, I went to one before. The admiral married Bai Shui and was a perverted guy. Speaking of the garrison at this time, Bismarck said, I have seen many garrison buildings during my journey. Some garrison palaces are built in the city center, some garrison palaces are built in the suburbs, and some are built on small islands or sandbanks in large rivers. After all, the ship girl is not a real battleship. It doesn't matter whether it's shallow water or deep water, whether it's flat or rapid, or even whether it has a port or not. Some admirals built their townhouses in the city center. In addition to the ship girls, these townhouses built in the city center also have many ordinary people as staff to maintain the operation of the townhouse. Such a townhouse has chefs and cleaners. As long as it's not a matter of combat, many other aspects can be left to ordinary people. Some townhouses are far away from people, and those admirals think it is troublesome to have many ordinary people around. Such townhouses are often not big, so even if they have a few or a dozen people to manage, it is not troublesome. After all, the ship girls' work ability much stronger than ordinary people. And remote places also have advantages. These places are often easy to obtain resource subsidies from the ship girl headquarters, and they are also easy to achieve results. Of course, the most important thing is the strength of the garrison. The stronger the government, the more resources it can get. Listening to Bismarck talking about the garrison, Sugu said, "But my garrison has been selected." His garrison had already been selected and there was no way to change it. After thinking about it for a while, since Bismarck knew so much, he then asked, "So what are the things that should be paid attention to when managing the garrison?" Bismarck was not modest, and even a little proud, but she was not arrogant. She said, "Lexington is better at managing the garrison than me. Except for fighting, I can't compare with her in management. I just go there are more places." "How many garrison houses have you been to?" "About 17 or 8. "That's great. Actually, I also want to walk around and see." "Really, I don't feel very good about it. I heard that many towns are actually connected with outside companies. More or less. In fact, the salary given to the admiral by the ship girl headquarters is not much." "Really? Then we really need an industry." Saying this, Sugu thought of some rumors and asked, "I heard that some garrison houses have special techniques for obtaining resources. Do you know?" "Probably in order to obtain more resources from the ship girl headquarters, to a certain extent, the results are falsely reported." "False reporting, killing good people and claiming credit. So powerful. It's just a slight exaggeration of the results. After all, there is often no way to accurately define the enemy's strength and weakness." "Then what do you think of this behavior?" Sugu himself didn't care about unspoken rules to a certain extent. In the past, he felt that as long as officials could do things well, greed to a certain extent could be tolerated, and no matter how honest the officials were, it wouldn't work if they couldn't do good things. Of course, they could be both honest and honest. Officials who can get things done are the best. Bismarck held the tea, blew gently, the surface of the tea wrinkled, and said, "It doesn't matter, you are the admiral, as long as you think it is okay. I am a soldier, and I am the sword in your hand, admiral. You just have to say something if you want to do something." Sugu remembered what was repeatedly emphasized in class: if you violate your beliefs, you will fall into the deep sea. In fact, he did not want his ship girl to obey unconditionally. Bismarck said, "I have seen a ship girl who fell into the deep sea. I was also employed by the military police in the past. Think about it, how did that ship girl fall? The probably reason is that her admiral ignored her, and she doubted the validity of what she was doing, and her admiral gave her little help. The general situation is that a village was attacked, and the support of the ship girl was already very late. The attack of the deep-sea ship girl destroyed some houses. Although there is no way to avoid it, some ordinary people are also going too far. They feel that if you are a ship girl, you have to protect them. If you fail to do things well, they will curse you for deserting and not paying attention. Probably during the quarrel, the ship girl accidentally hurt someone. Because the doubts and confusions have not been alleviated, she fled into the depths of the sea in a panic and confusion. When I met her again, she had been coated in a layer of black. I was ordered to sink her at the request of the gendarmerie. When she sank, I saw her smile, and there was a sense of relief in her smile. Many of my companions who were traveling with me that time felt very bad when they went back. Ship girl, the headquarters gave them a long leave. Sugu said, I think of Exeter. Her job is to help the ship girl ease her doubts. If you are confused, you can go to her. It's no wonder that the ship girl named Leah would build such a church, just for hope. Help the ship girl. After Sugu finished speaking, Bismarck asked, then what? What do you think? No idea. Actually, I think that compared with these, the more important thing is that the admiral needs to be by her side. In fact, as long as there is the admiral's persistence and guidance, that ship girl will not fall into the deep sea anyway. The first thing that falls into the deep sea is confusion. A ship girl needs an admiral, and often she needs a flag and belief so that people will not be confused. After talking casually and talking about other things, Sugu said, Bismarck, you have seen so many garrison buildings outside. Do the ships of the same model look the same? I have only seen 2 Atticus. No, there are 2 Anthonys. There are many destroyers of the same model, but I have also seen a Richelieu, which is completely different from the Richelieu of our garrison. There is actually Richelieu who likes romance. Unexpectedly. Saying this, Xiao Zai started playing hatch next to him, and then Bei Zai took Xiao Zai, who was sitting next to Bismarck reluctantly, to bed. They always say that you can salvage the ship by attacking. Not only the ship girl will be confused, but the deep sea ship girl will also be confused. When you defeat her and free her from the shackles of the desperate memory of the past battleship, the deep sea ship girl will also become a ship girl and become your companion. Su asked various questions, and Bismarck also answered them in detail. They sat in the living room and continued talking. Soon, Prince Eugen and Leipzig also prepared to go to bed. Bismarck said, I went to the ship girl headquarters once, but I didn't go in. Anyway, it seems like an independent kingdom now. I've only been to a few cities. I don't know how much time passed, but Sugu was like a curious baby. Prince Eugen walked out of the room, and then she waved to Sugu. Prince Eugen whispered, come here. Sugu walked over and asked, what's going on? Ah, Admiral, you want to sleep? Yeah, okay, not too sleepy. Sister Bismarck and I rushed back all night and didn't sleep all day. Ah, Sugu was surprised. She also knew that even the ship girl needed to rest. Prince Eugen sighed and said, if you don't want to go to bed yet, if you are not ready to sleep, Sister Bismarck will definitely accompany you, no matter how sleepy or tired you are. Then Sugu went back and said something casually. He yawned to show that he was a little tired. Then he was about to go back to sleep and went to Prince Eugen's room when Bismarck stopped him from behind. Admiral, you haven't exercised for a long time. Have you ever run every morning? No, I'm too old to run anymore, Sugu joked with a smile, but it was true that he hadn't exercised well in a long time. I am always busy with various things during this time, and I really don't take any time to exercise. Bismarck looked at Sugu's figure and said, as an admiral, how can you do without an excellent physique? Admiral, compared to the image in my memory, your face is almost rounder now. Lexington is just growing up, pig. Now that I have found you and the little house, I don't need to go out. So I will supervise you a little during this period, and you should also exercise. Sugu lowered his head and looked at his figure. It was still a normal figure, with neither obvious muscles nor obvious fat, so there was no need to use such excessive words as raising pigs. Bismarck sat upright, pursed his lips and said, it's time for you to exercise. I will accompany you. Sugu went back to his room, and Bismarck also returned to his room. At this time, the desk lamp was still on in the room. Xiao Zai had already fallen asleep on the bed. Bei Zai lay on his side on the bed and reached out his hand from under the quilt to play with the little boy. Model. Bei Zai said while playing, Sister has 100 blood points, I have 101 blood points. Bismarck sat on the edge of the bed and began to undress, then she asked, "What are you talking about?" Bazi said in surprise, "Ah, sister, you finally want to sleep. Well, it's time to go to sleep." Bismarck said this. She saw Bazi still playing with the model, and suddenly became curious. She asked again, "Why do I only have 100 health points, but you have 100, 0 HP? Is it because of the standard parameters of the ship's equipment that I only have 100 durability points?" Bazi fiddled with the chess pieces, without raising his head, and said without thinking, "No, because sister, you lost your first blood." Bismarck paused in untying his belt. He was a little confused at first, but then he realized what he was doing. So she picked up the pillow from the bed and hit Bazi on the head. Bismarck said, "You just lost one blood, an unreliable sister in the family." After such a long period of exposure, she knew the meaning of these words quite clearly. Bazi said a little aggrieved, "You two have been in the living room for such a long time, even Xiao Zai has gone to sleep, and you haven't done anything. Sister, you are really useless. I thought you were very powerful. What to do in the living room?" Thinking of this, Bismarck hit the pillow several times in succession, and then dropped two words, "Idiot." Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 144. It's not long since winter started, and the city called Chuangziu on a small island near the south is actually not too cold. The weather is also perfect for exercise, so much so that you even have to take off your jacket for a little distance. Regarding exercise, Bismarck wanted to keep an eye on him, but Sugu wouldn't let a girl keep an eye on him every day. After a lot of bargaining, we finally settled on half an hour to an hour of exercise every day, whether it was running or something else. During these times, Sugu has been running and exercising or playing basketball. Occasionally, he also learns some fighting skills from Bismarck. In Bismarck's words, he cannot be knocked over by someone outside. Originally, Sugu had no interest in learning fighting skills. He was not a brave person. Later, Bismarck promised that as long as he practiced to a certain level, he would give Sugu a pistol that he had accidentally obtained before. As for firearms, Sugu, as a man, of course likes them the most. He didn't have the chance before, but now he can finally satisfy his desire. For this reason, he is particularly concerned about it during this period. It's just that Bismarck may have been an excellent fighter, but he was not necessarily an excellent coach. The high-intensity training at the beginning even almost caused muscle strain. Even in the first few days, my legs were basically sore due to the high-intensity exercise and lactic acid secretion in the muscles. Although this situation soon got better, if you think about it, people were forced out. Many days after he officially started exercising, Sugu was eating at his residence. Although I basically live here, I still get called to the other side sometimes. To a certain extent, Sugu is really not good at rejecting people. Bismarck is okay, Xiao Zai and Bazi's expressions of grievance and expectation make it difficult to refuse. During this time, because of Bismarck's return, the Bazi could not stay here, and the small house was always running over there. Every day, I thought about when there would be a townhouse. With the townhouse, naturally everyone could live together. It's just that the drawings have been submitted a long time ago, but there still hasn't been much feedback. Lexington didn't have any objections to things like exercise. For her, everything would be easier if her admiral left her. Even regarding Bismarck's training of the admiral, Lexington, who had always been gentle, was happy to see it happen. In fact, as far as she is concerned, as long as Sugu is in good health, it doesn't matter whether he is strong or not. Anyway, he will not be in danger when everyone is around. But since this is the case, wouldn't it be better to be stronger? At this time, Lexington put a towel on Sugu's leg. Looking at the red and swollen ankle on her admiral's foot, she frowned and felt a little heartbroken. She said, "Bismarck is really good. Even if it's exercise, you can do it step by step." Although she said that, she actually had expectations for her admiral to continue to exercise and improve his physical fitness. And because she put in a lot of effort in exercising, she always prepared sumptuous dishes every night. The redness and swelling on his feet were okay. For Sugu, they were almost healed in one night, and no bones were hurt anyway. More than these, he looked forward to the pistol Bismarck promised. Although sometimes he thought that he really wanted to get a toy, but no matter what, the gun was great. At this time, Sugu waved his hand to indicate that nothing was wrong. He looked at the dishes on the table and felt troubled. Pig's feet, Crucian carp, chicken soup. Isn't that right? Although it is a very nutritious dish, it seems that it is only eaten by women who are breastfeeding after marriage. Lexington was the perfect wife. She looked at Sugu's expression and filled Sugu's bowl with her own spoon, then showed an expectant expression. His admiral is not good at rejection, does not like to disappoint people, and is always used to responding to expectations. Lexington has now been able to grasp the character of his admiral well. The dinner specially prepared for the admiral, please don't let us down. Even York City has helped, and even the small house has helped. Sugu poked the Crucian carp with his chopsticks, sighed and said, Bismarck said you were raising pigs, but you are really raising pigs. Lexington showed a sly smile, the best thing is raising an admiral. I'm not a pet. Even though it's not a pet, I like it very much. Sugu smiled bitterly, precisely because the gentler the other party was, the more difficult and embarrassing he felt. Drawing drawings, studying the remaining courses of the academy, exercising, and collecting information about former ship girls from various channels have not stopped, although there has been no news. I sent letters to San Juan these days to explain my situation, but I haven't received a reply yet. Exeter doesn't know what to do. I don't know what happened to her sister York. There has been no news about the Prince of Wales. It is unrealistic to go and look for them in person. Someone actually came to ask me to go to the town's garrison in their city. They said that the treatment was excellent, but they still didn't want to go. It's too cold there. At this time, he was standing on the edge of the college's playground, exercising casually, thinking about various problems while exercising. It's not the same thing that Beizai is messing around with Jia all day long. We can't let Jia lead Beizai into trouble, but Beizai doesn't seem to be a worry-free guy. Every time I go to Bismarck to pick up Xiaozhao, I have to stay there for a day. Sugu was thinking about various things, and then after doing a few pull ups, Sugu heard a voice. Su, why did you think of exercising, Su? This nickname was only spread because of York City. Why can't I exercise anymore? Sugu looked over and saw that it was his classmate named Cheng Zi. He had been nicknamed Chenzi since he was a child. Didn't you say before that an admiral doesn't need training? Anyway, there are ship girls as bodyguards, but it's hard to get any training with you like this. I'm different from you. There are many people to take care of. Isn't your ship girl York City? You really have thoughts about instructor Akagya. How shameless for outsiders, they naturally don't know the relationship between Sugu and Akagya. Seeing that someone was actually laughing at him and unable to do pull ups, Sugu waved his hand towards the other person and said, come on, let's give it a try. He didn't know the results of these days, so he had to catch two people to start. Although he did not dare to compare with those who exercised regularly, especially some admirals who were originally soldiers, their tendons looked terrible and could indeed be said to be muscle knots. There are powerful admirals in the academy, but there are also weak admirals, and the other party is one of them. But Cheng Zi was obviously not a self-aware guy, so he said, okay. The weather wasn't too cold, so he was already active. Sugu took off his coat and threw it on the double poles beside the playground. On the other side, Cheng Ziyi put on a posture without even doing anything. He was indeed a novice. The college is open on weekends. At this time, apart from the admirals and ship girls, there are actually some ordinary people in the college, such as some salarymen. They threw their clothes on the ground as a goal, and used the width of the original football field as its length to create a small football field. At this time, they finished playing football and drank water while watching the competition here. It's a pity that the sparring match was not exciting at all. Bang bang, Sugu threw his opponent to the ground with an over his shoulder. Although it was embarrassing, Cheng Ziyi was not angry. To a certain extent, to be able to become an admiral, there are always people who persist, and ruthless people cannot be recognized by the memories in the steel of the past. Of course, it cannot be said that everyone is upright. Of course, they all have shortcomings, including greed, jealousy, and selfishness. People who are too perfect will make people feel scary and fake. A person who can become an admiral is basically a good person, but he is not a good person. After knocking the opponent down, Sugu looked at Cheng Ziyi lying on the ground and said, "I said you are weaker." Cheng Ziyi was not angry either. He looked up at Sugu and said, "You have practiced." "It's all right, I've practiced. Karate, Muay Thai, or martial arts. I don't know, it should be considered free fighting. Bismarck's fighting style is all about striking and killing moves, and he doesn't like fancy fighting." Then Sugu said, "Are you coming again?" "Come, why don't you come?" "Well, look over there, someone is calling you." Sugu turned his head in confusion. Cheng Ziyi had already pounced on him, but Sugu was well prepared and stopped the opponent with his backhand. There was probably a scuffle, but at some point a red-haired woman stood nearby and shouted, "Xiao Cheng, use your knees and then choke." The red-haired woman is the battleship instructor in the academy. As the battleship instructor Nelson, she may not be as good as others in terms of management, but in terms of combat, whether it is shelling or simple fighting, she will not be weaker than anyone. However, this kind of thing cannot be done with just some advice. Cheng Ziyi has no fighting talent, so he was a little confused when he heard that voice. "With your knees? How to use knees, knee strikes? Like Muay Thai? Choke? How to choke, now the arms are caught? You were fine at first, but when you heard the suggestion, you suddenly didn't know what to do?" Then Sugu's feet swept across the ground, and Cheng Ziyi was easily knocked down by him. For a moment, he sat on the ground with a look of disgrace, and then looked innocently at the red-haired woman over there. Cheng Ziyi recognized the facts clearly and said, "Forget it, I won't come." "You are awesome." On the other side, Nelson came over and said to Sugu, "Let's give it a try." No, no. Seeing the other person's eager expression, Sugu quickly refused. Zeppelin deliberately told him not to provoke Nelson. Besides, it was not a matter of provoking or not. If they had a fight, he would definitely be severely tortured. Nelson said, "I don't use the power of a ship girl, just treat me as an ordinary woman, and my power is controlled to the same level as you." On the other side, Nelson ran over in a hurry, already getting ready. Ship girls are very easygoing people. The eager expression on the other party's face made it impossible to refuse. In fact, it should be said that refusing at this time was the only way to provoke Nelson. In the end, Sugu had no choice but to accept the move. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 145. Nelson looked at the other person. From his own point of view, Sugu was just a little guy, but he seemed to have an unusual relationship with the powerful Akagi in the academy. Regarding the previous point, it is difficult to see any clues from an outsider's perspective, but when I was interviewed, I was right next to him. Then he saw Akagi, who had never had much communication with any man in the past, asking him shameful questions. It was not a joke, because he could see clearly that Akagi really wanted to hear those things. In a short period of time, the other party was nominated by Zeppelin and sent out for internship. Although York City was a good aircraft carrier as the initial ship, I'm afraid it was more than that. Zeppelin, although he did not deal with the other party, he still recognized the other party's ability and character. He originally disagreed, and Zeppelin even had a big quarrel with him once. Although I reluctantly agreed in the end, at that time I suddenly wanted to retrieve the other party's information, and I did so later. Sugu's past deeds can't be found at all, and the information on the file is completely blank. To a certain extent, it looks like Shikong, with no past at all. Nothing interesting can be found in the archives, looking at it from another perspective. For example, from a study point of view, he is indeed a very capable student. Originally, being able to pass the written test and interview means that you are capable. In terms of personality, I never contradict instructors, and I don't like to have conflicts with classmates. This does not mean that I am easily bullied, but I always habitually end the topic when there are differences in communication with classmates. If we talk about what kind of person the other party is, he is a smart person with an average personality. As an admiral, he is neither good nor bad. Thinking of this, she shook her head. No matter what the other party was like, it had nothing to do with her. But today I suddenly discovered that the other party had actually practiced a few moves, and suddenly wanted to learn from each other. Don't be shy, don't think of me as an instructor, just like this, put your hands on my shoulders. Ha! As Sugu put his hand on Nelson's shoulder, Nelson grabbed Sugu's arm with one hand, turned around and put his shoulder on Sugu's armpit, and then threw him to the other side. Hiss! Then Sugu lay on the ground like Cheng Zi, moving quickly, and with just a few moves, Nelson showed no mercy. I told you, don't be so shy and do it, just like you did in the beginning. I used my full strength all the time, and you tricked me into putting my hands on my shoulders. I was deceived. Then I'll attack. With that said, Sugu whipped his leg out with a symbolic blow. This move was actually more learned from York City than from Bismarck. On the other side, Nelson lowered his head and crouched down, stretched out his legs and swept Sugu down to the ground. Nelson was a little discouraged. Try harder. Sugu had a good temper, got up, waved towards Nelson with one hand, and started to pay attention. Right hook, block. Another straight punch, but was dodged. During the knee strike in Muay Thai, because he did not hold the opponent's neck to avoid dodging, Nelson slapped his knee with one hand and then stepped back to avoid it. Kick again, block again. Probably after a few rounds, Nelson, who had been defensive, finally made his move. After a short period of time, he was choked by Nelson. After all, Nelson's fighting skills were infinitely better than Sugu's. In fact, they were just letting each other off. If I use a little force, your head will be twisted off. After saying this, Nelson let go of Sugu, you know this. There will still be some, but the impact will not be good if used. Use it. Instructor, please pay attention. On the grass, two people were sparring, but most of the time Nelson was dodging. This was not because Nelson was suppressed, but purely because she approached the battle with a playful attitude. On the other side, a person ran past outside the grass field. Sister, what are you looking at? The girl with blue hair is Prince Eugen. Blue hair is actually not special in the academy. She ran over enthusiastically holding water. Standing next to her at this time was Bismarck, who was wearing a hat. Her short silver-gray hair and cat-eared hair could easily attract the attention of people around her. If anyone discovered that it was Bismarck, it would easily cause a sensation even in the academy. Look, the admiral is sparring with that ship girl. It must be Nelson with red hair. Nelson has been an instructor in this college for many years. Even people like Bismarck and Prince Eugen who don't pay attention to the college know each other. Compared to Akage, who never leaves the door but never steps forward, Nelson is much more famous outside. Prince Eugen added, "It seems that the Admiral will be difficult to win. We will definitely lose. Although he is not as good as Nelson from our garrison, that Nelson is not weak." "Really? But it's definitely not as good as sister." She called her sister, instead of calling her sister Bismarck as usual, because there are so many people and things need to be paid more attention to. But also because of such an intimate address, Prince Eugen was a little bit intoxicated. Although it was still not as good as Bizai, always calling Bismarck with the word sister seemed more intimate. Prince Eugen drank water and looked at Bismarck's back with some longing. His Bismarck sister was of course the strongest. Although the reputation number had the best record in the garrison, Bismarck's sister was the well-deserved flagship killer. How many moves can the Admiral endure? I don't know, I hope there are as many as possible. I will protect everyone. Prince Eugen said this. She is a girl who is overly protective. Don't talk and watch. Bismarck had actually come here a long time ago and was actually interested in sparring with his Admiral. It's just that the next scene is difficult to handle. Knocked down. Knocked down easily. However, because the ground is grass, even if it is dropped, it will not be easily injured. It's just that a grown man was beaten like this by a woman. The scene was too ugly. On the other side, Sugu was knocked down by Nelson several times. He finally gave up. Being abused unilaterally had no possibility of winning and counter-attacking. At this time, he simply sat on the ground and refused to get up no matter what. But there is no such stubborn mentality as not to hit the wall and never look back. Bismarck walked up and wanted to tell his Admiral to leave, but just walked up and heard Nelson's words. I don't know who taught you the moves. The movements are too fierce and there are killing moves everywhere. To learn the killing moves, your physical fitness must keep up, such as strength and speed. And as an Admiral, it is not good for you to think about killing people all the time. Nelson was teaching, and at this time a voice came. If you don't kill, you will be killed. It is wrong to still hold back in the face of the enemy. As the sound came, Nelson saw Bismarck walking up. Nelson looked at the other party, as if she was born to be incapable of dealing with him. It felt like facing Zeppelin. She said, "Isn't that right?" "I don't think it's right. Otherwise, let's all discuss and learn together." Bismarck took off his hat to reveal short silver gray hair, and then handed the hat to Prince Eugen to hold. The college was close to the seaside. At this time, the sea breeze blew Bismarck's short hair, and his bangs swayed a little. Her black boots stepped on the turf on the ground. As she walked, she said, "Okay, let's learn from each other. Even if my Admiral's good temper is criticized, he won't get angry, but she won't." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai Rong Yan. Chapter 146. Sitting next to the grass, a pair of brothers and sisters who had been beaten to pieces sat side by side. At this time, Sugu took care of his hair a little and picked off the roots. He looked at the clothes that were torn due to the sparring with some regret. Cheng Zi pointed to Bismarck, who was confronting Nelson in the middle of the grass, and said, "Someone seems to be standing up for you." Cheng Zi had no way of seeing the relationship between Sugu and Bismarck. In his eyes, Bismarck probably went up to say a few words to Nelson, and then seemed to be a bit reluctant to fight, while Sugu sat on the ground and said nothing. Didn't say anything. Yep, it is. He will not expose everyone's relationship easily, because it can easily cause trouble. In order for Mu Chen not to reveal his relationship with Fletcher and others, he had to pay a lot of price, such as treating him to several meals. Of course, he was smart enough to invite everyone to the buffet, but he couldn't care less about the boss's grimace. He was not worried about the Bismarck. As a full-level battleship, he would not capsize in such a place. Bismarck's request did not stop him. After all, it was just a discussion and not a real battle. Both Bismarck and Nelson should be people who know their own proportions. At this time, Cheng Zi was sitting on the ground and bumped Sugu's shoulder with his shoulder, saying, "It's very shameless." He was knocked down in one fell swoop. "Why do you have the nerve to say that I am inferior? No matter how inferior I am not as inferior as you. A person who can be killed by me in just 3 moves has the nerve to say that I am inferior. I'll let you." Cut. On the other side, the discussion in the center of the grass has begun. Nelson was the first to punch, and then Bismarck grabbed the opponent's wrist with a backhand. The figures of the two people suddenly crossed each other. Bismarck wanted to throw Nelson over, but Nelson was not weak either. She immediately hugged Bismarck, and what was supposed to be a beautiful over-the-shoulder throw was stopped at the beginning. Sugu and Cheng Zi were relatively close, and they could see clearly at this time. Punch, block, backhand counter-attack, whip kick, fierce momentum. The punches hit the flesh, and the movements were not sloppy at all. The two of them were silent at this time, only attacking and dodging. Cheng Zi said, "It's the first time I've seen that person actually fight like that with Instructor Nelson. It seems like you've seen a lot of Instructor Nelson's battles." "Because my ship girl is a battleship, I went to class with her and watched many battles. Mainly because of Instructor Nelson's fiery temper." Ha, it's starting again. The two people in the field of vision were obviously very strong. After watching it for a few minutes, the battle started and ended quickly. Bismarck and Nelson looked at each other, panting and getting ready to go. Then Cheng Zi stood up from the grass and said, "It looks like there is no way to end it at once. That person is also very handsome. I don't know what kind of ship girl he is. I asked my ship girl to come and have a look and open my eyes. Go ahead." As Sugu said this, a voice sounded next to him, "Admiral." The owner of the voice was Prince Eugen. She waited until the people around Sugu walked away before coming over. Prince Eugen said with his hands behind his back, "They actually started fighting like this. My fighting skills were all taught by Bismarck, but Nelson felt that the teaching was wrong." Bismarck retorted when he heard it, "And that's what happened. You heard it too. The education policies are different. Aren't you angry after being taught a lesson? You can't get angry so easily." "But Sister Bismarck is angry." "Not that much." Prince Eugen also sat on the ground side by side with Sugu. After thinking for a while, he put a finger to his lips and said, "No, it should be like this. Only I can teach the Admiral, and no one else can teach him a lesson." Sugu glanced at Prince Eugen, who always acted like Bismarck's secretary and nanny. At this time, he did not expect that he would actually make fun of Bismarck. Prince Eugen looked at the strange look Sugu looked at him and said, "You used to say that Sister Bismarck is a tomboy," and she started to pay attention to her actions. Now Sister Bismarck is very careful about her image, although she doesn't even say it, but I know. But it doesn't work if you are bullied, even if you are called a tomboy, you are a tomboy. It's not bullying. Speaking of which, who do you think will win?" "Sister Bismarck will never lose in a fight," Prince Eugen said proudly, his expression really full of confidence. "Is this what happened when you were fighting?" Sugu had never seen many battles between ship girls. "The main thing is shelling. I only engage in close combat when bullying destroyers. Are you good at fighting too?" "I can't. But I will protect everyone." After saying this, Prince Eugen's expression was a little dull. She felt happy to be able to protect others and be needed. She seemed to have thought of something at this time. While the two were talking, the battle between Bismarck and Nelson on the other side had reached a fever pitch. Neither Bismarck nor Nelson are weak. If we look at the strength of the ship's equipment alone, the Bismarck equipped with the Golden Cannon Mk6 will definitely be stronger. But apart from the power of the ship's suit, everyone competed as ordinary people in terms of fighting ability, and Nelson was not weak at all. As an instructor at the academy, Nelson has not been on the battlefield for a long time, but in order not to make fun of those ship girls who came down from the battlefield and then entered the academy for in-depth training, she also trained well. At this time, the degree of fighting was controlled within a certain range, and some dirty tricks were useless, and there were no tricks like slaps in the face. But even so, after a fight, people's hearts are boiling. It's just that Sugu couldn't make a good comment on the battle between the two. A weak person criticizing a strong person would only make people laugh. I don't know which round it was in the middle of the grass, but it suddenly ended quickly. Kicking and grappling, Bismarck grabbed Nelson's arm with one hand and threw the opponent to the ground over his shoulder. Whether intentionally or not, Bismarck ended the battle the same way Nelson did to Sugu. Then Nelson got up and seemed to want to take action. Bismarck said a few words, which could not be heard clearly from a distance. Then the two shook hands, and Nelson patted his clothes, probably admitting defeat. On the other side, two women stood in the distance. They were both ship girls who had come down from the battlefield. At this time, they followed their admiral to the academy. It was estimated that they would have another week of training this time. They watched half of the battle. One of the two people fighting was their instructor Nelson, but the other person didn't know them at all. They have also experienced battles. At this time, the strength of the two opponents is clearly distinguished. At least it is easy to beat someone like themselves. As onlookers at this time, they still sound reasonable in their evaluation of many things, not to mention whether they are good or bad. Although I can't see the ship's uniform, that person is probably very powerful. Generally, those who are good at fighting are not weak in cannon fire. Ha, how can you say this? You know autumn when you see a leaf, you know the whole leopard when you see a speck. Good philology. But instructor Nelson did something wrong at first, and he didn't even have to do anything. I'm praising you, but I'm so embarrassed. Haha, but since instructor Nelson has been suppressed, he will probably lose his temper for many days. I wonder who the other person is. I don't know. But, cat ears. Bismarck. Has another Bismarck appeared in so many years? But she has short silver gray hair, so it's not like that. Generally speaking, Bismarck doesn't want to dye his hair, although every Bismarck they are different, but they still have a military character. When you talk about this, I think of a rumor about the legendary mercenary Bismarck called the Black Ghost, but why does he want to come here? As they talked, people gathered around them, including students, employees, teachers, and instructors. Bismarck and Nelson were separated in the middle of the grass, and there was another line of sight looking over them. She saw the whole thing clearly, and at this moment she saw Bismarck's eyes light up. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 147. Walking out of the grassland, he took the hat from Prince Eugen and put it on. Looking at his admiral, Bismarck said, "What Nelson said is right or wrong? What I teach you are some killing moves? If these moves are used for competition, there is no way to use it. However, the ultimate move is not meant for sparring. To catch someone by surprise and attack them unprepared can be regarded as a small attack on the big one. If used well, it can help you get out of trouble. Fighting is not a spar. You bow, I bow, and then the battle begins. Fighting, cruel and bloody. Your physique is weak and you need to exercise more. However, exercise does not make your body strong all at once. Admirals, as ordinary people, may encounter accidents. At this time, it is better to learn some killing moves instead of enemy defeating moves. No matter what, only dead people are harmless. You can listen to what she says, but there are some things you shouldn't believe too much. She is an instructor at the academy and has her own considerations. But when an enemy comes, the most important thing is to kill the enemy as soon as possible. Fighting these things is very important to us. It's a trivial matter for ship girls, but it's very useful to you. Talk casually, today's exercise is over. Because it was the weekend, the college was full of people, and something big happened at this time. Bismarck didn't show any closeness to Sugu along the way. In the eyes of outsiders, he was just a friend at most. I don't like fighting, and I won't easily conflict with others. I don't like seeking death. Like to compromise rather than compete with each other. Sugu said this. Halfway through, he suddenly thought of something. He said, "Do you want to say hello to Instructor Nelson, or else just leave like this?" Prince Eugen said, "Why don't you go now? It seems like a provocation." Although he asked this question, he had already made his decision. Sugu said, "It's not that exaggerated. I'll just say it and leave." When he walked next to Nelson, he had already stood up. "Instructor, I'm leaving first," Sugu said. He waved his hands and didn't care. "Let's go." Sugu walked a few steps, and a voice came from behind. Nelson asked, "Your friend? Is it Bismarck?" He lowered his head and didn't answer, thinking about whether to hide it, but Nelson said again, "Just ask me, you can go." After talking to Nelson, Sugu pulled off his coat from the double pole, wearing it as he walked. The clothes were not buttoned, so he casually opened them. Thinking about the problem, he quickly caught up with Bismarck. On the other side, as Bismarck left, Nelson patted the grass roots and dust on her body, and then lowered her head to straighten her hair. "I felt a little angry about my disastrous defeat, but I had nothing to complain about because the other party defeated me in an upright manner. I could only complain about my lack of academic skills." At this time, she looked around and was about to leave, when a voice came over. "Instructor Nelson." She looked in the direction of the voice. It was her former student. She seemed to be seeing her miserably failed, and she smiled awkwardly. "Are you back?" The two people opposite nodded. Although they belonged to different garrison houses, they originally studied in the academy together. The admirals of the two are also classmates and friends. When there are no sorties, or during holidays, we still meet occasionally, practice together, and sometimes gossip together. They served as battleships and battle cruisers, and Nelson was their instructor. At this time, one of the people asked, "Who is that person?" Although there was a guess in his mind, the guess was just a guess. "Have no idea." "Well, the instructor always likes to find random people to discuss with." "She looks unhappy." Nelson didn't hide anything, she was straightforward. Even if she saw that the other party was a little unhappy, she didn't hold back at this time. There are always some things that British and German ships can't deal with, and that's deeply rooted in their bones. You can probably imagine those former British crew members shouting curses, "Krauts." If you are a German crew member, when you see a British ship, you will probably call the British a bastard. If they really become friends, there will naturally be no conflict. If they are just strangers, they will inevitably feel bad. I thought the instructor knew her. How could I possibly know that kind of guy? But that guy is very strong. You ask me who she is. A natural feeling tells me that that guy is probably Bismarck, although the other party did not show his ship uniform, but Nelson has been an instructor for such a long time and has never seen any kind of ship girl. Sometimes he can guess what type of ship girl the other person is based on a feeling. But who was the man talking to her? The young admiral just came in this year, but he will probably leave here by the end of the year. No way, I thought he should be a very strong admiral. Only in this way is it possible. Why do you say that? We heard a rumor before. Instructor, you always don't know it at school. I guess no one talks about it? It's a rumor about the legendary ship girl mercenary Bismarck. This is probably how they put what they have heard. The rumor came out. Nelson looked at Bismarck's back. He still couldn't confirm the opponent's specific identity, but if the opponent was really the so-called Black Ghost, then he might not be at this level in combat. Then she thought of Sugu. Although from the outside, she couldn't tell why, was she a friend or an acquaintance? Is Bismarck standing up for others today, or does he just have a problem with his own preaching? None of these things are clear. In short, first there was Akage, who was already terrifyingly strong, and now there is Bismarck, and it is very likely that he is the so-called legendary ship girl mercenary Black Ghost. What is so strange about Sugu? But Nelson didn't think too much about it at this time. It was a rare occasion for him to meet his student, and they walked together and exchanged a few words. Why do you think of coming back? Don't the instructors know? It's probably going to be training. Ha, I don't know, so your training should not be under my control. Speaking of which, are you like this now? Have you become stronger? Well enough. What do you mean okay, haven't you tested it? Nelson patted the dust on his hands, turned his head and looked at the two of them and said, "Come and practice with me, and I will check your strength." After hearing Nelson's words, the two women immediately cried out, "No, instructor." After all, whether it was the so-called Black Ghost Bismarck or the instructor Nelson in front of him, neither of them was the opponent of the other. If not, why would he have come all the way back for training? Well, although this training is probably not about combat. But instructor Nelson failed at this time, and the anger he was holding in his heart was probably going to be unleashed on himself, but that wouldn't work. It really can't be done. Alas, I have something to do. The admiral called me, "Instructor, let's go first." Seeing that the situation was not good, the two of them ran away. His two students ran away. Nelson smiled and didn't care. She just took 2 steps and saw a familiar person passing by her. It was Zeppelin. Accurate. At this time Zeppelin saw Nelson and said with a smile, "What's wrong? He looks gray and disgraced." Laughing, Zeppelin glanced at Bismarck's back. Looking for the lost ship girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 148. Sunday afternoon, with strong north wind and sunny weather, can be said to be the best weather. Someone in the dormitory building has already put up their quilts. After all, it would be difficult to miss such weather. At this time, in the teaching building directly opposite the dormitory building, Zeppelin was spinning the pen in his hand and sitting behind his desk processing documents. There were a lot of documents, which couldn't be processed in one afternoon. The documents were not urgent, so she could be distracted while processing them. In the afternoon, I saw Nelson, who had been fighting against me, fighting with someone. Nelson's opponent was a woman with short silver gray hair. Having watched the fighting session from beginning to end, the silver gray short-haired woman suppressed Nelson in almost every aspect from the beginning. Sure enough, Nelson lost in the end. So he walked up to flirt with him in an interesting mood, and said a few words casually. Looking at Nelson's angry expression, he felt that he would probably be very happy all day long. Who defeated Nelson? Later, he caught up with his two students. They talked about the rumors of the Black Ghost. Although they did not ask about it explicitly, some things could be inferred based on the intelligence. The woman with short silver gray hair was Bismarck. If it was Bismarck, it was not that I had never seen Bismarck before, but when the girl who inherited the soul of Bismarck's battleship lowered her head towards her and called her instructor, she suddenly lost interest in the name Bismarck. Regardless of how unlimited Bismarck's future is, if you are an instructor, you will be an instructor for the rest of your life. Even though Bismarck, as a new ship girl, will make progress, he will also make progress himself. Bismarck is actually not surprising, only the powerful Bismarck makes people care. Thinking like this, she soon finished reading a document, and then softly summarized the contents of the document. I would like to give you a formal invitation letter to invite a ship girl mercenary to become an instructor of the Academy. That is the USS California. The instructors at the ship girl headquarters are mostly made up of wandering ship girls and some ship girls from the garrison. There is no way to run for open elections, after all, there are so few ship girls. The dean is a maniac who attracts people, and he is almost attracted to her whenever he meets her. California had already agreed that it would send out another invitation letter to represent the college at this time. Mercenary, mercenary, softly summarizing the contents of the document, Zeppelin thought of Bismarck with short silver gray hair, who was also a mercenary. She originally heard her students talking about the rumor of a black ghost. It was not like she had never heard of this rumor before. At that time, I just listened to the beginning and smiled contemptuously without comment. After all, those rumors are too ridiculous. Bismarck, who is wandering around the world, meeting her and hiring her is like making a wish. She can help you defeat any enemy. Forever flagship and forever flagship killer? When I first heard the rumors, I thought they were just rumors spread by ordinary people, and they were so mysterious. After all, before becoming an instructor of this academy, she was also a mercenary who wandered around the world. It was not that she had never seen all kinds of enemies. It was not uncommon for those deep-sea battleships to be sunk by her in aviation battles, so she had some things still clear. Even if it's awesome, it's not that exaggerated. While thinking about it, he sorted out the documents one by one. Soon after, Zeppelin looked at the new information and frowned. I hope that we can arrange for a new admiral to come to the town hall. Zeppelin thought of the city in the file. There had been many applications for it during this period. At this time, she said to herself, your little big cities only have a total population of 3 guards. You are still not satisfied with the government. You have lost money, smuggled contraband every day, and you want to win over my students. If it weren't for the regulations of the ship girl headquarters, you wouldn't have built a garrison at your place. What kind of important route is this kind of application? Ah! Zeppelin tapped a chapter on the document, chuckled and flew the document out. But after finishing this document, Zeppelin thought about the route again. She remembered that she had also walked through the hail of bullets for the safety of the flight route. She did not rely on luck to survive until now. When she later became an instructor at the academy, she was actually very strong. Because she is very strong, there are few people she can respect, not even the dean of this college. The only one who can convince her is Akagi. However, Akagi has a gentle personality and doesn't like to argue with others or get physical. She always looks indifferent and looks like a dignified lady. She only shows some desire when eating. There are not many people who are worthy of respect along the way, but there are a few who can be called opponents. For example, the instructors of various branches in the academy may be equally matched in terms of combat experience, but if you think about the parameters of the ship equipment, destroyers, light cruisers, and heavy cruisers can be excluded first. They are frigates, not even a capital ship. Comparing yourself to them is bullying. Nelson, the battleship's instructor, can undoubtedly be called an opponent. The opponent has existed as a Big Seven in history. Even if it becomes a ship girl, it has few weaknesses except for speed. Bismarck, with his short silver gray hair, easily defeated Nelson in combat. Although it's unclear in terms of shelling. But judging from those rumors, I heard that the Bismarck ship was equipped with gorgeous Mk6 and Type 91 armor-piercing projectiles. Although she is an aircraft carrier, she is very clear about the weapons installed on various ships. If it is true that all those equipment are among the best and most powerful as rumored, will Bismarck with such equipment be a showman? Probably not. However, this kind of ship equipment is a bit exaggerated. Let's discount the rumors for now, and I guess the Bismarck's ship equipment should not be too bad. Speaking of artillery bombardment, Bismarck, who was rumored to be known as the Black Ghost, could always sink the enemy's flagship with one shot. His best attack was two-shot artillery bombardment. I heard that such artillery bombardment was almost guaranteed to hit. While thinking about it, he continued to read the file. Halfway through the file, Zeppelin put it down. You want to allocate funds again? Do you think the Enterprise is great? The Enterprise is a battleship with outstanding military achievements in the history of the old world. Many people still have a good impression of the Enterprise. Thinking of the history of the old world, in terms of historical significance, Bismarck was the flagship of Germany. He sank the Hood with one shot, which was almost a glorious battleship. Although the ship girls are not bound to the history of the old world in the past, because they were born from memories, and those original memories held Bismarck in high esteem, the ship girls born from memories will be more or less affected. Bismarck, with short silver gray hair, is serious and powerful, a legendary shipgirl mercenary and the pride of Germany. She is a person who worships the strong, and she fell into silence when she thought about this. After a while, feeling uneasy, she poured herself a glass of water. After drinking water, she leaned on her chair, her long black legs folded together and resting on the high desk. She gently folded her pointer and began to think. The breeze blew the office curtains, and the blue curtains were swinging. The wind became stronger and stronger, and the curtains bulged. At this time, Zeppelin punched the curtain that bulged like a giant, thinking to himself, he was not like this in the past. Bismarck is Bismarck, what does it have to do with me? She is strong as long as she is strong, she can do whatever she wants, and she doesn't know her. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai-De-Rong Yan. Chapter 149. Probably in the 10 days or so that followed, Zeppelin met Bismarck several times, the Bismarck with short silver gray hair who defeated the Academy instructor Nelson. After several times of attention, Zeppelin probably figured out the other party. Bismarck always sat on the bench next to the playground. From an outsider's perspective, there was actually nothing wrong with him. She always wears a hat, a long black coat, and sometimes a large brown trench coat, with her hands in her pockets. She looks like the red-flowered double sticks in the underworld in the movies sometimes shown at the Academy. She is always accompanied by a blue-haired girl, but sometimes there is a pink-haired girl. The pink-haired girl looks lazy. Every time she just sits for a while and then sleeps on the bench. At that time Bismarck would cover each other with his coat, and seem to be a caring person in addition to being serious. The time she comes here is irregular, sometimes on weekdays and sometimes on weekends, and she doesn't deliberately come at any time. Nothing strange could be seen, and of course it was not that bad guys were stepping on the spot. Bismarck's actions seemed to be casual. However, if you pay careful attention at this time, you can see some clues. Every time the new admiral named Sugu was exercising, Bismarck was right next to him. This was never a surprise. Think about it this way, on the day I saw Bismarck and Nelson competing, I thought they were friends, but now it seems that their relationship is definitely not an ordinary friendship. She knew that Sugu had some relationship with Akagi. Akagi had asked her for help time and time again, but she had never done that before. Even now, Sugu and Bismarck are still related. How could a new admiral know so many powerful ship girls? Then something is wrong. On Saturday afternoon, there was a strong north wind. The wind blew for a while, and then the sun came out. This was the best weather in winter. At this time, Zeppelin was sitting on a bench next to the college's playground. There was a tall banyan tree there, and someone was practicing the harmonica next to him. It was like a noisy harmonica, and his level was terrible. Wanting to let the harmonica player go, she stood up, and then she saw Bismarck again. Bismarck, with short silver gray hair, sat on the bench directly opposite him. He was leaning on the armrest of the bench wearing a hat, leather gloves, and a large trench coat. Sitting next to him was a blue-haired girl. At this time, the blue-haired girl was eating something, and then they started talking. Soon after, the blue-haired girl handed the thing in her hand to the other person, as if she wanted the other person to taste it too. As if refusing, the blue-haired girl withdrew her hand and gnawed the food in her hand like a hamster. Zeppelin sat on the bench and observed, thinking that he looked like some idiot. In fact, I didn't understand what I was thinking, and I didn't make a plan for what was going to happen, so I simply made a decision in my mind. She stood up from the bench and straightened her tie, pulling it down in a decorous manner. Then she stretched out her hands and tucked her silver hair behind her ears, then touched the pendant on her earlobe and took off the willow leaf pendant to avoid looking too frivolous. I thought that Bismarck should be a conservative person. After dressing up, I felt that I was worried about gains and losses. Although my face looked simpler, I couldn't change my clothes. At this time, she was wearing a white shirt with ruffles, a small suit, and a hip-covering skirt with black pantyhose. In the end, she still looked seductive. After adjusting his clothes, Zeppelin walked up on high heels. Students I met on the way came over to say hello. "Hello, Instructor Zeppelin. That's fine with you, but don't play with carrier-based aircraft in the playground." "Instructor Zeppelin, what I told you last time. Tell me next time." After chatting casually with people he met on the roadside, Zeppelin walked to the bench next to the playground. As if she was aware of herself, the blue-haired girl finished eating what she had in her hand, raised her hand to wipe away the grease from her mouth, and then smiled shyly. The blue-haired girl said, "What do you want?" Zeppelin looked at the woman with short silver gray hair in black clothes and said, "Hello, I am the instructor of this academy, Zeppelin. Nice to meet you." "Hello." "Well, hello. Are you Bismarck?" "Why do you say I am Bismarck? If you feel something looks like it, just come over and ask. If it's not the case, forget it." On the other side, Bismarck looked at Zeppelin, who had silver shoulder-length hair and came over to talk. She remembered that Sugu had said that Zeppelin, the instructor in the academy, had been a great help to her, so at this time she said, "Yes, I'm Bismarck." "So what's up?" "It's nothing. I saw you sparring with Nelson, and she quickly failed under your attack." "Nothing, she is actually very strong." "Stop being humble, you are the pride of Germany." "Ha! I heard them say that you are a black ghost. You have been working as a mercenary. You can defeat any enemy no matter what kind of enemy it is." "In fact, I also worked as a mercenary before becoming an instructor in this academy. I worked as a mercenary in the West. But my fame is not as famous as yours, so I probably don't even remember me now." "Black Ghost, why haven't I heard of it?" In fact, I had heard it from Sugu, but I had never heard anyone mention it to me when I was a mercenary. As the person involved, she didn't know it herself. Those rumors rarely reached her ears, and she was not a woman who liked gossip. Whether it's good or bad, how dare a hyena talk about a lion in front of a lion? Seeing the other person's defensive look, Zeppelin smiled and talked about his past events. "I have also been a mercenary before. At that time, as a mercenary, I loved making friends with people the most. I remembered that when I was a newcomer, I would get commissions by doing things for others. I didn't understand at that time. The admiral said that the town government did not have that much money for the time being, so the commissions had to be distributed several times. So every first paragraph I was going to go to her townhouse at that time, and then she would take me to travel around, eat and drink, and give me a part of the commission. It happened like that several times, but she didn't seem to want to be without money at all. It was only after a long time that I discovered, she didn't have any money, she just wanted to make money from me. Only then did I realize that she is such a cunning human being. Even though she is like this, we are still good friends. I remember that when I was a newcomer, I didn't understand anything. How to use carrier-based aircraft to gain air supremacy, and how to make the carrier-based aircraft climb to a higher altitude and then dive. When I was a newcomer, I didn't understand anything. When I attacked with some people, they said I could do whatever I wanted. How to do it, I found out later that they were just heavy cruisers, they didn't know anything about aircraft carriers, and then I surpassed them twice, and they were nothing more than that. I have been through many battles. In fact, I also have a nickname. Telling his story bit by bit, Zeppelin asked Bismarck, "That's it for me anyway, I heard that you have sunk the enemy with one shot many times before, so many people say you are the flagship killer." Flagship killer, as long as you can sink the opponent with a single bombardment when serving as the flagship, some people will say that you are the eternal flagship because of this. There is nothing to be proud of. The main reason is that the enemy is very weak. Bismarck was not modest, and many things became more frightening when he told them frankly. A deep-sea battleship should be considered a very strong enemy. Otherwise, who should be called powerful? Prince Eugen asked doubtfully at the side, should these ordinary deep-sea battleships be said to be strong? What should deep-sea turpits say? Zeppelin was a little surprised. Deep-sea turpits was an enemy entrenched in the depths of the sea. She asked, have you met her before? Being able to come back alive from deep-sea turpits was a commendable achievement. Nothing, my sister has sunk her. But... Zeppelin wanted to say that he had never heard of the sinking of deep-sea turpits. Prince Eugen said, just like there is more than one you, there is more than one me, and there is more than one turpits in the deep sea. After hesitating for a moment, Zeppelin said, sink turpits in the deep sea, then, you will definitely be able to grow a lot as a mercenary. Why should we continue to be strong? I think we are already strong enough. Upon hearing this, Zeppelin's voice suddenly got stuck. I originally thought that this Bismarck could be called the flagship of Germany and the pride of Germany. Because of this, I even felt troubled for many days. I came to talk with curiosity and friendliness, thinking that we would have a pleasant conversation. However, being famous is not as good as meeting each other. It seems that the rumors are not true. Even though he defeated Nelson and had the aura of being a legendary mercenary, I still feel a little ashamed to say such words. Deep-sea turpits cannot be defeated by one person, and it seems that Bismarck is no more than that. In this way, she suddenly felt ashamed of what she had thought a few days ago. He suddenly lost interest, but after all, he couldn't just curl his lips and leave. He hesitated and said, can I ask about your relationship with Sugu? The next second, Bismarck looked over, his cold and serious eyes sending chills down his spine. At this moment, Zeppelin felt like a little beast being stared at by a poisonous snake. In the past, she actually disdained warships other than aircraft carriers. After all, she didn't know how many enemies would be sunk by her carrier-based aircraft when they couldn't see her. In the past, when we quarreled with Nelson and argued about taking action, everyone was actually able to take good control of their own identities. But if she really had to practice, she wasn't afraid. The sudden murderous intent at this time, if an ordinary person faced a ferocious beast, the last time he felt despair, he went to practice with Akagya. In the first round of the battle, he was destroyed by the opponent and almost all the fighter jets were defeated. It was established from the start. Later, when I communicated with Akagya, I felt the other person's gentleness. In fact, I have almost forgotten that drill now. Terror was like cold water pouring in from all directions, and death was like cold arms grabbing her ankles. She couldn't walk, and she didn't know what to say. Her voice stuttered. The other party said that he had defeated Tirpitz of the deep sea, and now she suddenly began to believe that the other party's words were correct. Otherwise, who could release such terrifying murderous intent? Just feeling it can make me, who has experienced many battles, feel scared, like a terrifying enemy. Even if I keep telling myself not to be afraid in my heart, fear is fear, and my trembling body cannot deceive myself. Zeppelin hesitated for a moment. It would be hard to imagine that Zeppelin's always resolute instructor would behave like this. Hesitation and hesitation should not appear in the dictionary for Zeppelin. However, Zeppelin was so afraid that his performance would anger the other party. Zeppelin said, "I don't mean any harm, because I am Sugu and his instructor, so I want to ask. If you had any malicious intentions, you should be dead by now and become a wreck. Remember, there are some things you should not touch and some things you should not ask." There was no exaggeration in the cold voice, but she could still hear it at one point. Even in the academy, it should be his own territory. In terms of status, as an instructor of the academy, he is much more powerful than the other party. However, the other party has no scruples and just threatens him like this. I know. It's good that you know. I'm sorry, I have to leave first." Zeppelin was sitting on the bench, and Bismarck had already left wearing his trench coat. On the other hand, the blue-haired girl Prince Eugen walked behind. She stuck out her tongue and said, "Sister, that's just like this. Don't be offended. Some things are taboo. We don't mean any harm. We know you as the Akage, we are good friends. You may have some doubts about deep-sea Tirpitz, and it is indeed it. We defeated deep-sea Tirpitz, of course, not by one person, but as a fleet, with many people, and everyone would be very powerful, otherwise how can it be?" Zeppelin waved his hand and said for a long time, "It doesn't matter." Bismarck had gone a long way, and Zeppelin sat alone on the bench for a long time. To say she was angry, she was actually not angry, but rather excited. Then she stood up from the bench to go back, walking and whistling. Although he was treated with a little indifference and even threats today, as Bismarck, his charm is exactly what he should be. The Bismarck should be a serious, majestic, and powerful battleship, not a Bismarck who calls himself an instructor. As a Bismarck, this is how it should be, she said to herself again. After just 2 steps, she stopped and her expression became steady, like a little girl, and she commented on herself like this. "Feeling trembling, feeling excited, that is such a powerful Bismarck. Looking for the lost ship girl." Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 150. There are some rules that cannot be broken. No matter how pitiful the villagers are and how many villagers beg you, you cannot interfere in political affairs or interfere with the affairs of bully landlords and corrupt officials. Of course, other people will take care of those things. In order to completely separate the ship mother from the government and prevent everyone from falling into the quagmire of politics. The previous admirals paid a lot and gave up a lot. Some admirals originally almost reached the position of high-ranking military officials, just to make the later admirals and ships. My mother has a pure land, so she resolutely gave up her position. Everyone has to perform his or her own duties to make society work. No one is perfect. If you think you are great and interfere in other things, you will only break the rules. The only thing that cannot be broken is rules. Admirals cannot interfere in political affairs. As an admiral, we should only manage and guard a sea area. In class, Zeppelin was holding a pointer and tapping on the blackboard. She was not just teaching aircraft carriers and light carriers like Akage. In addition to teaching the ship girl, Zeppelin also teaches the admiral. She has wandered around the world before and is good at many other things besides fighting. This class is about the role of admirals in the world and society. If you don't understand, you can read chapter 15 of the textbook. That chapter explains what I talked about today. Of course, if you still don't understand, you can come here. Ask me, but if the question you ask is too simple, I will hit you. Zeppelin was talking on the podium, and there were people whispering to each other below the podium. Instructor Zeppelin is lying. She doesn't know how to hit people. Of course, if you pester Instructor Akagi, she will beat you. They are like Lily. I know some gossip. In fact, it is because Instructor Zeppelin was raped by Instructor Akagi. Conquered during the exercise. The Admiral said this, and with a pop, a piece of chalk hit his forehead, and then the people around him laughed loudly. Throwing a piece of chalk and accurately hitting the enemy, Zeppelin hugged his teaching materials and then said, "Then the get out of class is over. Well, the person who just spoke stayed to clean the classroom, sweep the floor, wipe the blackboard, and wipe the windows. I will come and check. Zeppelin's class has ended, this is the last class of the day." Sugu was packing his teaching materials alone under the podium. Only the Admiral was needed for this class, so York City was not here. But he will go find York City after class, and then everyone will go back together. At this time, people were walking out of the classroom one after another. Sugu put away the teaching materials and was about to leave, but Chi Berlin suddenly stopped him. "Sugu." He was fixing the pen on the textbook and asked in confusion, "What's going on?" "There's something I want to ask you." "What happened?" He immediately thought that it might be something about Akagi. That person with short silver gray hair must be Bismarck. I said something to her that day. Yes, I know. Although he was a little surprised, he did not deny it. After all, it was not difficult to recognize Bismarck. Zeppelin spoke to Bismarck that day, and Bismarck later spoke to himself, although not much. Zeppelin asked, "What is your relationship?" It's someone I knew before. Although because of Akagi's relationship, I got help from Instructor Zeppelin in front of me for many things in the academy. If the other party has any request, I will do my best to help. But there were some things, such as his relationship with Bismarck, that he still didn't want to talk about. Are we acquaintances like Akagi? No, Bismarck is his wedding ship, but Akagi is not his wedding ship. This relationship is really different. Well, let's do that. By the way, when I have time, I will arrange for you to discuss your ideas with the engineer who will renovate your town hall. Didn't you say that you want to enter the town hall before the new year? Just before New Year's Eve? Well. Then Chi Bolin left with the teaching materials in his arms, leaving Sugu alone and confused. Zeppelin admired the strong, so now he likes Bismarck? Can't figure it out. Soon after, at the archery club, Zeppelin finds Akagi there. At this time, there was no one in the bow club, and Akagi sat there alone, wiping the wooden bow over and over again. Didn't Sugu and York City come to see you? Yeah, it's sad that I didn't come over. Do you know that Nelson was sparring with someone on the playground a few days ago and failed miserably? Yeah, Akagi responded. In fact, a few days ago, when his admiral brought Bismarck to look for him, he shocked people. He didn't expect to find so many people in such a short period of time. With the addition of 2 more wedding ships, Bismarck and Bizai, the future is becoming increasingly bleak. Kaga has never sent a greeting card or letter, and there is nothing that can be done. Nelson's opponent was Bismarck. I know. I talked to that Bismarck for a while. Senior Akagi, do you know what's going on about the Bismarck in the academy? What's going on? Just as Zeppelin understands Akagi, Akagi actually understands Zeppelin. Don't be pretentious. On the other side, Akagi blinked and still looked confused. Zeppelin was defeated. She touched her pocket and said, "Okay, the big round plate on Central Street, the roast duck restaurant is the roast duck restaurant, I'll treat you." Akagi replied seriously, "Bismarck, very strong. How did you know I wanted to ask this question?" Akagi laughed. Zeppelin is a fighting maniac, somewhat similar to York City. She should be like me. Zeppelin thought of York City. That girl also liked fighting the most. In order to learn, she would be the most diligent as an instructor. Senior Akagi knows Bismarck, right? I know her, but I can't tell you about our relationship. But one thing I can tell you is, Bismarck, she is much better than me. I told her some things, and some things are more concerning. Did she really sink Tirpitz in the deep sea? Yeah, but did she tell you? Bismarck didn't say it, but Prince Eugen, who accompanied Bismarck, did. Prince Eugen said that a fleet attacked in that battle, and everyone in it was very strong. You are friends. Did Akagi-senpai also participate in that battle? No, I am not among the people who accompanied her to sink the enemy. I am not qualified or strong enough. The power of deep-sea Tirpitz is beyond your imagination. Bismarck is very strong, but it is still not enough in front of deep-sea Tirpitz. Grid. I know that deep-sea Tirpitz is entrenched in the depths of the sea. It is now a big problem for the entire world. It is an honor to live under the hands of deep-sea Tirpitz. So, who were there in that battle? Cannot say. I swear I will never tell anyone, otherwise I will fall into the deep sea forever. Actually, it's not a big deal, because no one will believe it if I tell you. If you want to hear it, it doesn't matter if I tell you. But, little Zeppelin, I'm a little hungry now. Hungry, 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 you're always hungry. And don't call me little Zeppelin. Soon, on the bustling street of Chuangziu, there was a roast duck restaurant that was quite famous in Chuangziu. At this time, the waiter put down plates of various dishes on the dining table. As the vegetables and rice were finally served, the two people at the dinner table started to move. The little girl who is the clerk showed a surprised expression. So many dishes are not prepared for 10 people, why are you just starting now as if nothing has happened? At the dinner table, no one knew what the little girl as a clerk was thinking. Zeppelin was holding a knife and fork. Opposite her was Akagi with shining eyes. Zeppelin said, "Then it's time for you to speak." The cheeks on both sides were bulging. Akagi couldn't speak while chewing, so he could only nod. The beauty with black waterfall-like hair did not care about her image in order to eat, which shocked the people around her. It took a while to swallow the food in his mouth, and he drank a large glass of juice. Then Akagi waved to the clerk for another glass. Akagi said, "Who, for example, the Bismarck sisters, the Lexington sisters, the Aries Reputation, and the destroyer Ayanami." Ayanami, there was a destroyer among a lot of powerful ship girls. It was strange. Akagi nodded and said, "Ayanami, the ghost god Lingbo, we also call her Ling Zhanxian, but she is actually a pathetic person. If the originally promised ring is gone, then that's a poor thing." Ayanami. "No, I don't look down on destroyers, but they are too fragile and it is difficult to grow up." Akagi held a piece of breast meat and spread his hands, looking a little funny and completely inconsistent with her style. "If you don't believe it, there's nothing you can do about it, it's just like that anyway." Saying this, Akagi ate with a smile. "Then what's the relationship between you and Sugu? What's the relationship between Bismarck and him? They have a good relationship, but if you don't join us, I won't tell you. That's not some ulterior secret, it's the fact that I am the ship's wife of my Admiral Sugu. I haven't told anyone about it until now, just because I don't think it's necessary to avoid making things too troublesome." Zeppelin nodded, "That's right." Soon after, he said goodbye to Akagi and returned to his office. Then someone walked in, and Zeppelin raised his head. He was also an instructor. He was a member of the light aircraft carrier Ziwiho. He had not been in the academy for a long time. He was considered his junior and had actually received a lot of help from him. "I just always like to tell others that I am a sharp-tongued person. How could I have such an awkward personality? I am really a junior who needs to be dealt with. Rufeng came over at this time to discuss some work-related issues, and after some exchanges, he was ready to leave. Zeppelin suddenly asked, "What do you think ship girls like us should pursue?" At this time, Rufeng was a little surprised. She didn't know why her senior asked such a question, so she hesitated. Pursue, power or power, right? Zeppelin said, "We don't have an admiral, and we don't care about the garrison. We still pursue husbands and children, but that should be what humans pursue. Strength and power. In terms of strength, it is actually difficult for me to meet opponents now. I didn't know how to improve, so I came to this academy. Originally, I was supposed to be a wandering ship girl working as a mercenary around the world. In terms of power, I was transferred to the ship girl headquarters before, but I refused. I am not very interested in power." Listening to his senior's words, Rufeng also thought about what pursuits he should have as a ship girl. In fact, she wasn't too sure. Anyway, she had been just muddle along. Everyone said that the deep-sea ship girls should suppress the deep-sea ship girls, so she suppressed the deep-sea ship girls herself. Suddenly someone said that since we all don't have an admiral, we should all become mercenaries together, and then we became mercenaries. One day someone invited me to become an instructor at the academy, and then he came over and became an instructor. Rufeng put her fingers to her lips and thought about the matter for a long time. Finally, she said, "If I have to pursue something, it should be an ideal." Zeppelin looked up at the ceiling and said, "Is it ideal? So what is ideal?" Rufeng stretched out his finger and knocked on the wall and said, "Ideals are unrelenting pursuits, never giving up, sprinting towards the goal. There will always be difficulties and thorns before success. Cut off these difficulties and move forward indomitably." Alas, actually, I'm lying, I don't know. That's it. Zeppelin waved his hand to show that he understood, and then asked casually, "Speaking of which, are there any newcomers in the academy who have performed well?" "We don't have one here. I heard there is one over there on the battleship. It seems that the best performer this year is York City." Speaking of York City, the 100-eyed giant always calls Miss York City aircraft carrier. She is an instructor and calls herself Miss Student. It feels weird. After saying a few words casually, Rufeng, who was holding the book in his arms, said, "I have something to do, so I'll leave first. I'll have my class later." "Yeah, go ahead." As his junior Rufeng left, Zeppelin leaned on his chair. "Akage, Admiral, Sugu, Bismarck, York City, Prince Eugen." I read these words over and over again. Not long after, Zeppelin sat up from his chair and walked out of the office, walked to another office, knocked on the door, and said, "Xiao Qin, go and show me the arrangements for delegating the admiral this time. Ziokin is an ordinary person. After all, it is impossible to maintain such an academy just by relying on the ship girl. Ordinary people are hired to complete some simple tasks." After a long time, the girl named Ziokin carried a stack of information to Zeppelin's office. Zeppelin asked, "A student named Sugu, who did he arrange to be his instructor?" Even if the garrison can be decentralized, a new admiral cannot ignore it. Generally speaking, there will be reliable people who can help the newcomer for a period of time. Sometimes they arrange for admirals from the nearby garrison, and sometimes they arrange for some teachers. Ziokin replied, "Teacher Lin did." "Lin did? That's not a ship girl, she's an admiral." It's funny to say that the admiral gave up becoming an admiral because he was too African. After all, there is no way to become an outstanding admiral without a strong ship girl. She is old. It was like that, there were only a few destroyers, and sometimes the construction of the destroyers failed. Seeing that his classmates all became independent admirals, but he accomplished nothing, so in the end he simply quit his job as an admiral and went to the academy to become a teacher. It's a pity that even if you become a teacher, You will always be African. Ziokin continued, the ones with good luck and fair faces are Europeans, the ones with slightly inferior faces are Asians, and the darkest ones are Africans. These names are quite interesting. Zeppelin did not answer. At this time, she flipped through the information in her hand, thoughtfully.